There's a force so powerful that armies have fallen before it was even unleashed. A weapon so profound that empires have crumbled at its mere presence. And you were born with this weapon already in your possession. Your mind. Take a moment right now. Feel the energy in this room. Every single person here has fought battles. Some of you are fighting them right now. The negotiation that keeps you up at night. The competition that seems to always be one step ahead. The goals that feel just out of reach. You know what's fascinating? In my 30 years of studying success and human achievement, I've discovered something remarkable. Every battle, every single one, is won or lost in your mind before you ever step onto the battlefield. Just last month, I sat across from a CEO who controlled $1 billion empire. He leaned forward and shared something I'll never forget. I haven't fought a battle in 15 years, he said, because by the time others realize there's a fight, I've already won. This isn't arrogance. This isn't luck. This is the power of mental warfare at its finest. Think about the greatest victories in history, the deals that changed industries, the movements that transformed societies. They all started with one person who understood this fundamental truth. Physical force is the last resort of those who haven't mastered their minds. I remember standing in my office 20 years ago, staring at a stack of bills, wondering how I'd make it through the month. My competitors were bigger, stronger, better funded. But in that moment, I discovered something that would change everything. The secret wasn't in working harder or moving faster. It was in understanding the battlefield before the battle began. That discovery led me to develop a system, a method so powerful that it transforms how you approach every challenge in your life, a system that ensures victory without ever lifting a finger. The power you're about to discover isn't just about business, it's about life. It's about understanding that true victory doesn't come from force. It comes from positioning, from perception, from psychological advantage. The principles I'm about to share have been tested in boardrooms, on Wall Street, in personal relationships, and even in international diplomacy. They work because they tap into the fundamental laws of human psychology and strategic thinking. Every morning when I wake up, I win my first battle. It happens in complete silence, before the sun rises, before my feet touch the floor. Because I understand something vital. The battlefield of life isn't out there. It's right here. Most people wake up reacting to life. Their phone buzzes, their email dings, and suddenly they're fighting battles on someone else's terms. But the true masters, the real victors, they're different. They've already won before the day begins. Years ago, I met a martial arts grandmaster in Japan. I expected to find him practicing complex moves, perfecting strikes. Instead, I found him sitting quietly in his garden, and he told me something I'll never forget. Greatest victory is the battle not fought, because you made it unnecessary. This is where mental preparation becomes your secret weapon. Think about this. When a chess grandmaster sits down to play, they've already seen the game unfold in their mind. They're not just thinking one or two moves ahead. They're seeing entire sequences, possibilities, outcomes. Your life deserves this same level of mental mastery. How you begin? Every situation, every challenge, every opportunity, it's all a battlefield, but not the kind you're thinking of. This battlefield exists in the mental plane first. The physical world merely reflects what's already happened in the mind. I once worked with a sales professional who was terrified of cold calling. He'd stare at the phone like it was his enemy. Then we changed his mental approach. Instead of seeing each call as a battle to be won or lost, he started seeing it as a chance to solve problems, to add value. His mind shifted from combat to contribution. Within 3 months, he'd tripled his sales numbers. This wasn't just positive thinking. This was strategic psychological warfare. He understood that the real battle wasn't with the person on the other end of the line. It was with his own limiting beliefs, his own mental barriers. The art of strategic thinking goes deeper than most realize. It's not just about planning moves. It's about understanding the psychological terrain. When you walk into a room, before you say a word, before you make a single move, you should already know the mental and emotional landscape. I learned this lesson the hard way in my early days. I would charge into situations armed with facts, figures, and force of will, but the true breakthroughs only came when I learned to read the room, to understand the underlying currents of human psychology. Mental conditioning is your daily practice. Every morning I spend 20 minutes in complete silence, visualizing my day. But I'm not just seeing what I'll do, I'm feeling the confidence experiencing the certainty of success. I'm conditioning my mind to recognize opportunities before they're obvious to others. An Olympic athlete, they don't just practice their sport. They practice winning in their mind. They see the perfect performance, feel the perfect execution, experience the victory thousands of times before the actual event. This isn't visualization. This is mental conditioning at its highest level. Your mind is like a thermostat. Set it to success, and it will automatically adjust your actions, your responses, your very presence to match that setting. Most people let circumstances set their mental temperature, but you're going to be different after today. Remember this, the person who wins without fighting isn't just lucky. They've prepared so thoroughly on the mental plane that physical resistance becomes futile. They've mastered the art of psychological positioning so completely that victory is merely the visible result of battles already won in the mind. And speaking of positioning, this brings us to something crucial. Understanding how to create situations where victory is inevitable. Because once you've mastered mental preparation, you need to know exactly how to position yourself for success. A person walks into a boardroom. Before they say a word, before they make a single gesture, the entire dynamic of the room shifts. You've seen this happen. You've felt this happen. That's not chance. That's the power of perception at work. I'll never forget watching a negotiation where a small business owner won a multi-million-dollar contract against industry giants. She didn't have their resources, their team, or their track record, but she understood something far more valuable. She knew that perception creates reality. Before she ever entered that room, she had carefully crafted every element of how she would be perceived. Her confidence wasn't forced. It was a natural extension of her preparation. She didn't just present a proposal. She created an experience that made her victory inevitable. Others don't respond to who you are. They respond to who they perceive you to be. And that perception is something you can shape, mold, and direct with absolute precision. A secret I learned from one of my earliest mentors, he told me, when you understand that perception is reality, you never have to prove your power. You simply have to embody it. This isn't about manipulation, it's about alignment. Aligning your inner certainty with your outer presence. I watched a remarkable example of this principle in action last year. A young entrepreneur was facing a hostile takeover attempt. His company was younger, smaller, less established, but instead of defending, explaining, or justifying, he did something remarkable. He carried himself with such unwavering certainty that within weeks, the same predators who wanted to take over his company were asking to partner with him instead. Creating a commanding presence isn't about being the loudest or the most aggressive. It's about understanding the subtle signals that communicate power. When you walk into a room, do you know exactly what energy you're projecting? Do you understand precisely how others are interpreting your presence? The psychology of influence operates on a deeper level than most realize. It's in the pause before you speak. It's in the steadiness of your gaze. It's in the quiet confidence that says you don't need to prove anything to anyone. I once worked with a client who was brilliant but couldn't seem to advance in his career. His ideas were solid, his work ethic unquestionable, but something was missing. We focused on one thing, managing perceptions. Within 6 months, he wasn't just getting noticed. He was being pursued by companies who had previously overlooked him. The change wasn't in his skills, it was in how he carried himself, how he presented his ideas, how he managed the perceptions of those around him. He learned that true influence doesn't push, it pulls. It doesn't demand attention, it commands it. The most influential people you know, they don't spend their energy trying to convince others of their importance. They've mastered the art of letting their presence speak before they do. They understand perception management isn't about creating a false image. It's about strategically revealing your authentic power. And this brings us to something even more powerful, the art of strategic positioning. Because once you've mastered the ability to shape perceptions, you need to know exactly where to position yourself for maximum impact. Success leaves clues. And the most telling clue isn't in what successful people do, it's in where they position themselves. Think of water. It doesn't fight the mountain. It flows to where resistance is lowest and impact is highest. I witnessed this principle in action during a crucial moment in my career. 2 companies were competing for market dominance. One spent millions on aggressive expansion, marketing, and direct competition. the other. They quietly positioned themselves at the intersection of key industry relationships and emerging trends. Within 18 months, the second company wasn't just winning, they had made competition irrelevant. Strategic positioning isn't about where you are now. It's about seeing where the pieces will be 3, 5, even 10 moves ahead. It's about understanding that the right position makes strength unnecessary and effort almost effortless. True power doesn't come from size or resources. It comes from positioning yourself where multiple forces amplify your every move. Think about a lever. With the right positioning, a child can lift a car. Your influence works the same way. I remember sitting with a remarkably successful real estate investor. Everyone thought she was lucky because every project she touched seemed to turn to gold. But luck had nothing to do with it. She revealed her secret. I never look at where a market is. I look at where 3 or 4 major trends intersect. That's where I position myself. By the time others see the opportunity, I've already established my presence. This is where network building becomes crucial. But forget everything you've heard about networking. Most people network like they're collecting baseball cards, gathering as many contacts as possible. That's not positioning. That's not strategy. True strategic networking is about becoming the bridge between opportunities. It's about positioning yourself where value flows naturally through you. I learned this from a mentor who never seemed to work hard, yet opportunities constantly found him. His secret: he positioned himself at the crossroads of information, relationships, and needs. Every industry, every market, every human system has its pressure points. Find these points, position yourself there, and you can influence the entire system with minimal effort. One of my clients quadrupled their business in a year, not by working harder, but by repositioning themselves as the essential connection between 2 thriving markets that weren't yet talking to each other. The power of strategic alliances takes this even further, but here's the key most miss. The best alliances aren't about combining resources. They're about creating new realities. When you position yourself correctly, allies don't just add to your strength, they multiply it. I watched a small technology company transform their industry through strategic positioning. Instead of competing with giants, they positioned themselves as the essential partner that made other companies' solutions complete. They didn't need to fight for market share. The market fought to partner with them. In any situation, there are positions of power and positions of weakness. Most people focus on gathering strength. The masters focus on positioning. They understand that the right position makes strength unnecessary. Think of it like a game of chess. The amateur focuses on taking pieces. The grandmaster focuses on controlling key squares. When you control the right squares, taking pieces becomes almost automatic. This is where the real magic happens, when you understand that your position creates your possibilities. And this leads us directly into one of the most powerful forces you can harness: momentum. Because once you position yourself strategically, you need to understand how to create unstoppable forward motion. The most powerful force in the universe isn't strength, it's momentum. Once you understand this, you'll never look at success the same way again. I learned this lesson watching a tiny startup overtake an industry giant. They didn't outspend them, they didn't outwork them. They simply understood the physics of psychological momentum. I remember standing in that startup's office. Their whiteboard didn't show grand plans or complex strategies. It showed one simple thing. Every small win they'd achieved connected like links in a chain. We don't try to win big battles. We create situations where winning becomes inevitable. Late post people get wrong about moments. They wait for the big moment, the grand opportunity, but that's like trying to push a stopped train. The real power comes from understanding that momentum starts with the smallest actions, the tiniest wins. I worked with a sales professional who transformed her entire approach using this principle. Instead of aiming for major deals, she focused on creating small, consistent victories. Each phone call returned, each meeting scheduled, each minor agreement. They were all carefully designed to build momentum. Within 6 months, she wasn't chasing deals anymore. The deals were chasing her. A snowball rolling down a hill. At first, the movement is almost imperceptible, but each rotation picks up more snow, more speed, more power. Your success works exactly the same way. The key isn't in the size of your first actions. It's in ensuring that each action builds upon the last. I saw this principle transform a struggling entrepreneur's life. He was competing against billion-dollar companies. Instead of trying to match their resources, he focused on building momentum in one tiny market segment. Each small win attracted more opportunities. Each minor victory made the next one easier. Within 2 years, those same billion-dollar companies were trying to buy him out. The psychological advantage of momentum is even more powerful than the practical one. When people sense you have momentum, their behavior changes. They stop seeing you as someone seeking opportunity and start seeing you as someone who creates it. The secret I share with my highest performing clients: momentum isn't just about what you do, it's about what you track and celebrate. Every small win should be noted. Every minor victory should be leveraged into the next opportunity. This isn't just scorekeeping, it's momentum building. I watched a negotiator use this principle masterfully. Before discussing the major deal points, she secured agreement on tiny, almost insignificant items. Each year has built momentum. Each small agreement created psychological investment. By the time they reached the major issues, agreement felt natural, almost inevitable. In nature, everything that grows follows the principle of momentum. A tree doesn't shoot up overnight. It grows by tiny increments, each day's growth building on yesterday's progress. Your success follows the same natural law. And this is where true power emerges, when you understand that momentum isn't just about moving forward. It's about creating a force so compelling that others are naturally drawn into your orbit. This leads us directly into one of the most subtle yet powerful principles: silent leadership. Power doesn't shout. Real power whispers. The most influential person in any room is rarely the loudest. They're the one everyone watches when they're not speaking. This is the essence of silent leadership, and it's how you win battles without ever throwing a punch. I remember watching a CEO transform a chaotic boardroom with nothing but his presence. No raised voice, no dramatic gestures. He simply sat there, radiating calm certainty, and within minutes, the entire energy of the room shifted to match his state. That's when I truly understood. Leadership isn't about what you say. It's about who you are. The most powerful force is in nature. Gravity doesn't make a sound, yet it shapes everything around it. Your influence should work the same way. When you master silent leadership, people align with your vision, not because you demanded it, but because you made it feel inevitable. I witnessed this principle at work in a fascinating way. A new executive joined a struggling company. Instead of making grand speeches or dramatic changes, she spent the first month just being present, observing, listening, but her presence was so centered, so assured, that people naturally began coming to her for guidance. Within 6 months, she had transformed the company's culture without ever giving a single command. What most people miss about authority: true authority doesn't need to announce itself. When you understand this, you stop trying to prove your power and start simply embodying it. I learned this from a mentor who controlled vast business interests. He never raised his voice, never gave direct orders, yet his quiet suggestions shaped industries. In any interaction, there's a difference between having power and exercising power. The master of silent leadership understands that the mere potential for action is often more powerful than action itself. It's like a lion at rest. Its power is most evident when it's completely still. I watched a negotiator use this principle to perfection. During a tense negotiation, while others fought to be heard, she remained silent. But her silence wasn't empty. It was full of focused attention, of quiet confidence. When she finally spoke, her words carried more weight than all the arguments that came before. The power of example is your strongest tool. I worked with a leader who transformed his organization, not through policies or procedures, but through consistent, quiet excellence. His standards were clear not because he preached them, but because he lived them. His team elevated their performance, not because they were ordered to, but because excellence had become the natural state of their environment. Natural authority comes from alignment, when your outer actions perfectly reflect your inner certainty. I saw this principle save a company millions. During a crisis, when everyone was pushing for immediate action, their head of operations simply stood firm in his quiet certainty that patience was needed. His calm presence was more persuasive than any argument could have been. Remember this: the highest form of leadership doesn't push people toward a goal. It creates an environment where moving toward that goal feels like the most natural thing in the world. Like water flowing downhill, people should feel like they're following their own natural inclination when they're actually flowing in the direction you've envisioned. And this brings us to something vital: how to apply these principles in your daily battles. Because understanding these concepts is just the beginning. The real power comes in knowing how to use them in every situation you face. Last week, I watched someone close a seven-figure deal without making a single demand. They walked into that room having already won, not through preparation alone, but through the artful application of everything we've discussed today. In business, the greatest victories often look like coincidences to outsiders. I remember a client who was facing aggressive competition in her market. Instead of fighting back directly, she applied these principles masterfully. She positioned herself as a trusted advisor in her industry, built momentum through consistent value delivery, and let her silent authority grow naturally. Within months, those same competitors were approaching her for partnerships. How this works in real-world scenarios. When you're in a business negotiation, forget about winning and losing. Focus on becoming the natural center of value. I witnessed a remarkable example when a small company was negotiating with a major corporation. Instead of trying to prove their worth, they positioned themselves as the missing piece in the larger company's strategy. They didn't sell. They allowed themselves to be bought. In personal relationships, these principles become even more powerful. Think about the last time you tried to convince someone to see things your way. How did that work out? Now imagine instead creating an environment where they naturally come to the same conclusion you've already reached. That's the difference between pushing and positioning. I coached an executive who was struggling with team conflicts. Instead of addressing the conflicts directly, we focused on building psychological momentum through small agreements and shared successes. Within weeks, the team's energy had shifted. The conflicts didn't need to be resolved. They had become irrelevant. Career advancement. This is where these principles shine brightest. I remember working with a mid-level manager who was consistently overlooked for promotion. We changed his approach completely. Instead of chasing recognition, he focused on positioning himself at the intersection of key company initiatives. He built quiet momentum through consistent results. He led through silent example. Within 8 months, he was offered a position 2 levels above his current role. Let me share a negotiation tactic that demonstrates all these principles in action. Before any important negotiation, focus first on shaping perceptions. One of my clients does this brilliantly. She ensures that by the time she enters any negotiation, the other party has already heard about her value from 3 different trusted sources. That's not manipulation, that's strategic positioning. The key in all these situations is to remember, the battle is won before it begins. A friend in real estate shows this perfectly. Before making any offer on a property, she builds relationships with everyone in the transaction ecosystem. By the time she makes her move, accepting her offer feels like the natural choice to all involved. They work in layers. Each small success builds foundation for larger ones. I watched a sales professional transform her entire approach. Instead of pushing for sales, she focused on becoming a trusted advisor in her industry. She shared insights, built connections, positioned herself strategically. Her sales didn't just increase, they became inevitable. Your current challenges. Are you pushing against resistance? Or are you positioning yourself where success becomes natural? Are you trying to win arguments, or are you creating environments where your desired outcomes feel inevitable? In every situation, there's a way to win without fighting. There's a way to achieve your goals that feels natural and effortless to all involved. And this brings us to something vital: how to handle the obstacles that will try to knock you off this path. The greatest illusion in life is that obstacles are blocking your path. In reality, they're not barriers, they're building blocks. Every master of silent victory knows this truth. Resistance isn't something to overcome. It's energy to be redirected. Let me share something powerful that happened just months ago. I watched a business owner face what seemed like a devastating setback. Her largest client, representing 40% of her revenue, announced they were leaving. Instead of fighting to keep them or panicking about the loss, she did something remarkable. She turned to truly understand why they were leaving, used that insight to transform her business model, and within 6 months had tripled her client base with a more sustainable approach. It's what most people miss about resistance. It's not personal, it's directional. Like a compass pointing north, resistance shows you exactly where you need to focus your attention. When someone pushes against your ideas, they're not your opponent. They're showing you what needs to be addressed before victory becomes inevitable. I remember working with a corporate executive facing fierce opposition to his innovative project. Instead of defending his position, he invited his strongest critics to become project advisors. He understood that opposition often masks a deeper desire to be heard and valued. Those same critics became his strongest advocates, not because he convinced them, but because he transformed their role from outsiders to insiders. Mental resilience isn't about being tough, it's about being like water, fluid, adaptive, impossible to break. When you face an obstacle, ask yourself, what's the opportunity hidden within this challenge? One of my clients turned a product failure into their biggest breakthrough by simply asking this question and remaining open to unexpected answers. The key to converting setbacks into setups: understand that every no brings you closer to a better yes. Every closed door forces you to find a better path. I watched an entrepreneur lose a major contract and think his business was finished. That loss forced him to pivot, to innovate. Today, his new direction has brought him success he couldn't have imagined when he was fighting to keep that contract. The difference between a setback and a setup is nothing more than your perspective and positioning. And this brings us to our final moments together, where everything we've discussed comes together in a way that will transform how you approach every challenge in your life. Right now, in this moment, you have everything you need to win every battle without lifting a finger. Your mind is your weapon, your presence is your power, your strategic patience is your path to victory. Tomorrow morning, when you open your eyes, you'll have a choice. You can step into the world ready to fight your battles the old way, with force, with stress, with constant effort, or you can step into your day as a master of silent victory. You can move through your world understanding that true power doesn't push, it positions. The principles we've explored today: mental preparation, perception management, strategic positioning, momentum building, and silent leadership. They're not just concepts, they're tools awaiting your command. But here's what makes this moment crucial. Knowledge without action is merely entertainment. Tonight, before you rest, take 5 minutes of absolute silence. In that silence, picture your most pressing challenge. See it not as a battle to be fought, but as a game to be won through strategic positioning. Feel the calm certainty that comes from knowing you've already won, not through force, but through mastery of these principles. Your next victory is already within you. Your next breakthrough is already in motion. The only question is, will you step into that power right now? Stand with me. Feel the strength that comes not from what you do, but from who you are. Your era of effortless victory begins this moment. Thank you. And remember, the battle is won before it begins.